maybe in the next class we'll complete the discussion. Okay, I'm using two sources for the book. Actually, there are many more, but primarily two. This model has been beautifully described in Pat and Patel's book. It's available. It's little expensive book, but you can get it on internet. You can buy it, I think, from Amazon or someplace. It's lovely book. I mean, if you don't understand a concept, then possibly you can go to this book and look at the details. So it's very simple. It's beautifully written, although I may not follow it fully all the time. Okay. All right. So we'll study the following. We'll look at the model, and we'll look at one simple implementation of that, and we'll complete the implementation understanding in the next class. Okay, why are we studying this model? See, all the computers that we use today are based on this model. Of course, people have been changing a few things in the model. Like this model doesn't talk of parallel processing or overload the execution of instructions, but if you leave few things apart, all computers of today follow this model. Okay. So it's very, very important for to understand this model first, and then we'll go on to actual microprocessor implementation. Like, I mean, we will take maybe RISC-4, RISC-V, and then we'll also look at Intel. Okay. So it's really important model. And then, of course, it was developed by von Neumann, and that he developed in 1946. Okay. So basically, it says that this model has 5 parts. It means that computers that he wanted to represent as a model, because for anything that we plan to do, we want to design or something, first we have to have a model in mind, and then we can create implementations of that. All right. So this model has 5 parts. Okay. First part is memory. Okay. Second part is processing unit. Third is input. Fourth is output, and fifth is control unit. Now, it means that any machine you base on this model should have at least these parts, right? Okay. So to repeat, John von Neumann has proposed a model, and he says and he has written a paper in 1946, and that paper presents that any computer should have 5 important parts. Okay, so let's go ahead. Okay, now this is Professor John Neumann. All right, this is a model here. Okay, so it has, you can see that it has 4 parts, 5 parts, right? First is memory, is shown here. Okay, then we have processing unit where instructions are executed. Okay, then input unit and output unit and control unit. All right. Okay, the memory is very important part. This is where program resides. Okay, this is also have data items, right? So memory contains both the program and data. Now, without data, note that without data, program is useless. Program always work on data, some data items, right? Now, this data item either can come from memory. Okay, say for example, you store a lot of values or constants in the program. Okay, or some other values, right? Or you're doing some information processing, and then you have, say, weather forecast data available, and then that will be kept in memory. Now, second kind of data that can come from input device, like you type something. Okay, when you type, that comes from keyboard, and then this second type. All right. So data can come from memory, or it can come from keyboard. Okay. Similarly, we have output unit, which we use monitor. Okay, and the printer, disk, hard disk, or whatever, right? There are hundreds of peripherals today. Okay, All right, and okay, so what we have completed is memory, input, output, and then fourth is processing unit. Now, processing unit is where all the number crunching happens, right? Remember that computer uses only numbers, right? Internal representation are zeros and ones, and finally, these are represented as numbers. So ALU is arithmetic logic unit, which does all calculations, all arithmetic unit functions. Okay, like addition or multiplication or logical and operation or logical or operation, and so on and so forth, right? And then something that is shown as temp is nothing but registers, where we can temporarily store the values or intermediate values of any program. So what happens is that there are, when you suppose you are operating on two numbers, right? You are adding one number to another, and these numbers will come from, let's assume, memory. Now we know that memory access time is very high. So and then both numbers have got to come together into ALU, and which is very difficult if you operate only on memory. Okay, then what we do is that we bring those values and keep it in registers that we call it here is temporary. Okay, I am sure you would have studied registers, which consist of number of flip-flops in your logic circuit course, right? Earlier course. I will ask few questions to you about registers. Okay, and then most important unit, or I can say one of the very important unit is control unit. Okay, control unit controls the execution of the program. Okay, say for example, a program consists of what? A program consists of number of instructions that are executed. Okay, now the responsibility of control unit is to understand each instruction and do and generate control signals such that proper data manipulation or data movement happens. Okay, so control unit is a responsibility to execute the complete program, and it has number of registers, right? And state machine. So we'll look at these one by one. Any question up to this point? It has computer, or is the model has 5 parts: input, output, memory, and control unit. All right, and processing unit has ALU and registers. All right, now you can see some lines here, right, which are interconnecting. There are some dashed lines and then some dark lines, okay, or solid lines. The solid line shows data movement part. The data is moving from, example, input to memory, or it could also move from input to possibly CPU to registers. Okay, but the model doesn't say so. Okay, and then data movement is happening from memory to output, and then there are dashed lines which shows the control lines. So this control unit is controlling these things. All right. Okay, let's move to the next diagram. So let's start with memory. So we have studied memory already in brief. Okay, memory can be treated as a sequence or array of bytes. Okay, so first byte, second byte, third byte, fourth byte, and so on and so forth. And the program will see this nothing but an array of bytes starting from 0 up to n, capital N. Capital is n is equal to 2 raised power n minus 1, where n is the number of bits required to represent the address. Okay. So we can, again, repeating, memory is nothing but an array of storage elements or array of bytes where values can be stored and read. Okay. Now, two registers are shown here: memory address register and memory data register. Okay. We'll look at these now. Okay. So the way to address any memory is by reading and writing. So these are the two main operations that we do in memory. Okay, the CPU can only read or write. That's it. Okay, so reading we also call is loading, and writing we also call is storing. Okay, uh, all right. Then there are two registers are required to access memory. Okay, first is called memory address register. Now, memory address register contains the address of the memory location that we want to read. Okay, when ALU or central processing unit wants to read some data item, or it wants to bring the data item to itself, okay, then it will put the address value into memory address register. Okay, now remember that I am going back, memory address register in memory unit. Okay, so it's here. So CPU or processing unit will send this value that it wants to read to memory address register, and then memory will read, that memory unit will read the data item and put that data item into memory data register. All right, okay. Okay, so to read, load memory address register with the address or location that we want to read, and then data is placed into MDR, memory data register by memory. Okay, from there CPU can read it. In order to write, what we do is that we load memory address register with the address that we want to read, and into MDR we put the data that we want to store, and then activate the enable signal, and then a memory will write in that location that's specified by memory address register, and the data that's available in MDR to memory location. Okay, is it clear? So basically I can say that we can say that there are two registers, MAR and MDR. That's minimum required for memory to work. Okay, MAR nothing but it points to a memory location. So let's assume that this is a memory. So and this shows first byte, second byte, assuming there's a byte addressable. Okay, so if you are writing into this location, then memory address register will give location of this. So essentially a pointer to this place. Now what? And then when we are writing into this one, the contents here will go into this one, into that memory location. The contents of that will become contents of MDR. Any question?
I have a question.
Yes.
So in a computer, generally there'd be many such operations ongoing. So at one point in time, there could be many such read writes going on, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, the MAR and the MDR would be, how would they be implemented?
How do you know they are not happening sequentially?
So I don't know. So that's exactly what my question is. That when it comes to
So
MAR,
yeah. So basically, if now let's understand this is a model. Okay, implementation could be different. Okay, nowadays of course we can do parallel read and write. Okay, having multiple memory arrays. However, considering that there is only one memory, and a memory can only and it has one read port and write port, then it obviously it can read sequentially. All right, so in that case there is only one memory address register and one memory MAR, one data register, MDR. All right, now we will extend this model, and when we create more powerful machines, and when we see that this memory is in general, this model is a bottleneck, then we'll see how to improve it further. Okay, right now in most of the computers, even that we use today in your machine, is largely a sequential reading and sequential writing. Okay, to us it may appear that there are multiple writes are happening, right? But these are overlapped operation mostly. One will write it for some time and then wait for other operations to be over, then second one, and so on and so forth, right? So we get illusion of parallel writing and reading, but internally it happens sequentially in very simple machines that are based on von Neumann model. Okay, and then we'll see how supercomputers or multiprocessors are improving this model or changing this model. Okay, with this understanding, let's move ahead. Okay, now what we have discussed is about writing. For reading, let's assume that we are reading, say, this element here. So what we'll do is that in memory address register, we'll put this address, right? So the address, it will be pointing into this one. Okay, and when read operation happens, the data will go from this content that's inside will go to MDR. While writing, contents are already available, sent by central processing unit, and then it will be kept here. Okay, all right, so let's move ahead. And then in the center, we have processing unit. Okay, so processing unit, obviously, the purpose of execution of program is that instruction has to be executed. And we'll see what these instructions are. And largely, we can say instructions are of, say, 3 types. Okay, and then, say, for example, simplest one is addition of 2 integers. Okay, then role of ALU is to do addition. Okay, and or logical operation, like if it has 2 operands, then ALU will do logical AND or logical OR on that. Also, we can do left shift, right shift, and all those kind of things in ALU. Okay, and then we have something shown as temp, which is nothing but temporary registers. Okay, we'll see the motivation why we need temporary registers. Okay, okay, so processing unit consists of functional units, which is main one here is ALU, and ALU can perform add, subtract, multiply, and or shift left, shift right, and set if less than, those kind of instructions, right? And okay, and then there is another. So what we have said is each machine will have different kinds of instructions, right? But in general, all machines will have certain basic types of instructions like addition or subtraction and multiplication. Now, in case of GPU and very specialized machines for a special function, it could be rather than integer, it could be floating point operation related instructions, right? So we will study these as we study RISC architecture. Okay, that we have studied, computer has a word size. It's either 32-bit or 64-bit or 16-bit. So it started with 8-bit, then 16, then 32, and now there's 64-bit. Now, when we say word size, then we define a lot of things from that. Word size, let's assume, is 32. It means that register size will be 32, and ALU will input data which is 32-bit wide. Okay, so okay, all right. So this is about ALU in brief. Okay, then we have registers, or we can use a scratch pad. Like, I mean, it's not really something where final values are stored. It's kind of for doing rough work, right? I mean, when you do calculation in the exam, you have rough sheet. Okay, we call it scratch pad. So it's again, another keyword here is the temporary storage. It's not the finally where the value goes, right? It's not the memory. It's only temporary memory we can think. Now, what is the need for registers then? Why? Anyone? Anybody can answer this?
So to store the intermediate calculations.
Yeah, that we have already discussed. Why can't we bring it from memory?
So it's more costlier.
Oh, costlier in terms of?
time of access in the main from the actual memory unit also.
Wow, very good. Excellent. Absolutely right. See, you have seen in logic class or digital logic class that register consists of flip-flops, right? And how many clock cycles you need to store a value or read a value? Say 1 or 2 or maybe 3 or something like that. A few, we can say this less than 10 cycles. I mean, usually it can be 1 or 2 cycles or maybe 3 cycles, right? So we can say just few cycles. So it operates at the same speed as what ALU operates on, right? Because essentially it consists of sequential logic circuits, and it's built into processor, right? So it uses the clock, same clock. So what I'm trying to say is that it's closest to the processor and operates exactly at similar clock cycles, same speed. Okay, so it's so it of course it stores intermediate values and which is required for calculation. So motivation is here. Memory is big but slow. Registers operate at processor speed, almost at clock speed, and it ensures fast access to operands. Now we remember that we have ALU, which looks something like this. We show it like this, okay? And it has two inputs. Okay, let's assume now. And both will come from registers. So basically it's running, the registers are running at the same speed as processor, and access is very fast. Had we brought data from memory, it would have ALU would have to wait for some time for that, and it has to synchronize both data at the same time, right? So all that will complicate the logic and slow down the logic. Okay. Now remember that this register is of same as the word length. That's how microprocessor are designed, right? Say 32 bits in case of MIPS. Okay, and then registers are not just 1 or 2. Each processor or microprocessor has a set of registers. Okay, say for example in MIPS we have 32 registers. Okay, earlier Intel 86, if I remember correctly, had 8 registers, and these registers are of word size. Okay, now the question I'm asking is that why can't we have too many registers? Because number of data values we can bring it from memory, keep it there for a longer period of time. So it will help us, right? Any answer for that? There is always limit on number of registers we can have. Say 32, 64, that's all. I mean, we don't go beyond these numbers. Okay, the answer is that it's expensive, right? I mean, and when we'll have to see, what all we can do with the chip, right? Because the area is kind of fixed. Okay, so it's kind of optimization we do, and we want to also control the cost. All right, so this diagram here shows why we need registers. Okay, so this memory hierarchy we have studied already in previous class, but we didn't have this part, registers. Okay, now registers are here and access time is approximately 0.1 nanosecond, almost like few processor cycles. Okay, and then so something we bring it from memory and put it into register, and processor here it uses registers, right, for doing operations. And then processor is fed by memory. Okay, and then we have cache here, and cache will use SRAM technology, and access time is 1.2 nanosecond. So it means that the rate difference between register and SRAM is approximately 10 to 20 times. Okay, it means that registers are 10 to 20 times faster than SRAM. And below SRAM, which is cache, we have DRAM, which is main memory, which is 50 to 150 nanosecond. So if you get data from DRAM to processor, then you will have to, almost like 150, 1500 kind of slowdown you'll have to do. And then if you go further below, then time goes up. And at the bottom, in the last class, we didn't discuss this. There is something called tapes. And tape access time is almost like 1 minute. Okay. So if you have to get data from tape, imagine the slowdown that will happen. All right. So registers work as the fastest possible speed. Okay. Now remember, the registers are part of processor. We have seen in this slide. I'm sorry, I will have to go back. Okay. Registers are part of the processing unit. So essentially the chip that makes processor has built-in registers. All right. Okay. Any question up to this point? Any question? Yes, no?
Sir, I think there is no question.
Pardon?
So I think there is no question.
Remember one thing, when you do design, etc. of processor, register ALU, input to ALU, arithmetic logic unit, comes from register file. Okay, and width of register file is that of a word length. Okay, okay. So and in data for ALU or arithmetic logic unit operations, although comes from register, but essentially we take the data from memory, right? That's our address space. It could be cache memory or main memory, depending on where the data is. And first the data comes to registers. Okay, and then operation happens based on the data. For example, is adding A plus B is equal to C. Okay, so A and B first are read from here to register. Say A will come, let's assume here from some location, B will come here, and then input of those registers will come to ALU, and result C will again go back to register file. And from there, it will be stored to some location here. Okay. All right, you got it? Now, processor will view memory as nothing but something like address space from 0 to whatever. Will decide whether it's in cache and memory. It's not botheration of CPU. It's botheration of memory management unit, which is part of OS. Okay, it simply views memory as array of bytes or array of words, depending on whether we are byte addressable memory or word addressable memory. So there are basically three kind of sections you will study in computers. First is ALU, like add, subtract, or and, etc. Okay, and then there is a load and store. Load and store operate between register and main memory. Okay, when we say load, it means the data, say particular, say A, value of A is brought from this memory location. There's a reading into register file. The storing is the value of register is to be stored into memory. Like C is to be stored into memory, right? Okay, so three instructions are arithmetic logic unit, load and store, and third is control transfer. Now, remember one thing, the main difference between calculator and program that we execute in computer is that in calculator, there is nothing for decision making. Okay, you can do certain operation in a sequence, that's it. The power of program or power of code that we write is coming not only because of A and B we are doing, but some decisions we take. If the value, input value is something, then we have to do certain set of instruction, otherwise that, right? that we call is, control transfer instruction. It means that if some conditions are met, then execute something else, okay. So we will have, for example, we will have instructions like, if some condition is satisfied, then do something else, okay. So this is one kind of control transfer at higher level language, right? At lower level language, if we can say jump to certain location if certain conditions are met, okay. If the register value is 0, then jump to certain location. So those kind of instruction where some decision making happens is called control transfer, which transfers the control sequentially. Okay, normally the execution of program is sequential until we get control transfer instruction, where the flow of instruction or the next instruction to be executed may not be something that in sequence or that's stored in memory in a sequence, but somewhere else. Okay, all right, any question? All right, assuming that there's no question, I'm moving ahead. Otherwise, please ask me at any point. Yeah.
Can you repeat control transfer?
Okay, control transfer instruction. Basically, what we're discussing here, 3 types of instruction. First is normal mathematical function like add, multiply, subtract. Second is load, store, and third is where normal flow of the program changes. Normal execution, because computer or the ALU executes instruction in a sequence. See, you write first instruction, second instruction, third instruction, right? And the program will always have some code that will be executed based on some condition if it's true. Like if some condition is true, then. So essentially we are now, when this instruction is executed, we may change the next instruction that is to be executed. It's not the sequentially next statement, but somewhere else in the program. So control of the program is changing here based on certain data value. Got it? See, normally
Yes.
when you write program 1, 2, 3, say a plus b is equal to c, and then you do multiplication or division and so on and so forth. These are all running sequentially. So you'll bring first instruction and execute it, second instruction, execute it, and so on and so forth, right? And then, now that's not very powerful program. Whatever program you write is some function you calculate, and that's based on some data value. Okay, and you say here, let's assume you compute a value d at this instruction, and next instruction you take if d is greater than 0, then do something or jump to certain location and do these operations. Now here the control flow, so far you have done doing it sequentially, suddenly based on some data value changes. Okay, so these kind of instruction which changes the flow of execution of instruction are called control transfer instructions. Okay, hope it's clear. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other question on this one? All right, we'll come to this little. And there are input and output devices, like we have already, we know this, right? All this you know, so I'm skipping this part. And then very important part is control unit. And we can see 2 registers, important registers, which all computers have. One is called program counter, we call it PC, and second is called instruction register. Okay, program counter keeps track of which instruction is being executed. Okay, so it points to next instruction in line to be executed. Okay, instruction register contains the instruction to be executed. Okay, when we are, for example, doing add A, B, C, this is a assembly instruction. It means that it says that add value of C and B and bring it to A. So A is equal to B plus C. This could be a statement in C, and assembly language it will be add A is a destination register, and then you add B and C, well, something that is in register B and C, or some register, add them and bring it to A. Now this instruction is kept here in instruction register. So instruction register has the instruction that is under execution. Okay, so let's look at this way. Okay, we'll come to this registers little later. The role of control unit is like that of a conductor of an orchestra. Okay, it means that it tells everyone what to do. So it generates control signals. You know, for example, it's running, say, is executing instruction A and B. It will send control signal to ALU. It will send control signal to registers and tell register move the data, or it will enable output of registers, and similarly enable output of ALU, disable output of ALU, you know, and then get the data from memory. So it will enable ports of memory and so on and so forth, right? So it does everything to control the operation of other units in the computer. Okay, so it conducts step by step process of executing every instruction in the program. It will take one instruction, execute it, and in order to execute it, it has to enable certain gates. It will have to make sure the data movement happens over data path, and so on and so forth, right? So it keeps track of where we are within the process of executing the program. Actually, it means that what instruction we are into. Okay, and then second important thing is that where are we in the process of execution of each instruction. The execution of each instruction requires number of steps. Say, for example, A plus B is equal to C. You'll have to read data from register A, read data from register B, bring it to ALU. Reading means that bring it to ALU. ALU will perform addition and output. So output port is to be enabled, and then output of ALU will go to some register, and then that register input port is to be enabled. So all these things are done using control unit. Okay, so within an instruction there are multiple steps that are required, and it keeps track of these steps, and also it keeps track of which instruction is to be executed. And in order to do that, which instruction, there's a counter called program counter, okay, which we have already seen earlier, which contains the address of next instruction to be executed. And then we also call it instruction pointer. Anyway, we will use this term in program counter, PC, okay, which points to the next instruction to be executed. And the second instruction register, which keeps track of instruction being executed. Essentially, it keeps the instruction. It actually has the instruction to be executed. Like instruction is add ABC, then instruction register will contain this instruction, which is under execution. Okay, all right. Let's move ahead. Hope it's very simple. So what control unit does is that reads an instruction from memory. Okay, how will it read? It will, the program counter points to the next instruction. So if this is memory and keeps instructions, and then PC program counter, the output of program counter will point to, value of program counter will point to the instruction that is to be read. So the control unit will enable program counter, and you know, we read the value of memory, we read the value from memory, etc. And second thing it does is that once instruction comes to instruction register, okay, so let's assume that we have fetched the instruction, then it will interpret the instruction. It means that it will decide what to do by generating control signals. Okay, and control signals are actually required for data movement or data manipulation. So it essentially will tell other components what to do. Okay, So an instruction may, as we discussed, may require large number of steps to execute. So it may require multiple cycles, machine cycles to complete. Now, note that instruction execution is atomic in nature. I'm sure this word you would have studied somewhere or other. Atomic means that either instruction execution is completed or not completed. All right, it may not be intermittent because instruction execution may consist of a large number of steps. So it's not that out of say 5 steps in an instruction, it will execute only 2 and not execute the remaining. All right. Okay. Now, one Neumann model, also called stored program computer. It means that it has functions in the memory. Okay. Now, okay, so it also defines there are 2 main properties. A stored program, it means instructions are in their memory in a sequence, like the program you write, and then the corresponding machine code will be there in the memory. Okay, and then sequential instruction processing. Okay, now you may ask, just now we have discussed here instructions will changes the sequential execution. We'll see that, right? Okay, instructions are stored in linear memory array that we have seen. Okay, so the machine sees memory as array of words, and then program is stored sequentially. Okay, so this is a program. And now memory is unified between instruction and data. So memory, it can contain also data, right? The assignment that I have given to you also has is area for text, which is instruction, and also data area. Now, interpretation of stored value depends on the control signals. Now, how do you know a memory contains both instructions and data? Let's assume this is instruction and that's data. And we are reading something. How do we know this is instruction, not data? So this depends on actually the control signal or control part decides and knows where the instructions are starting from, right? Okay, and then PC will point to instruction. Okay, and wherever PC points to, that will be instruction. That's the interpretation. All right. So essentially, control unit is instruction or data. All right. And then one instruction is processed, fetched. One instruction is fetched from memory, then is executed, and at a time. All right. So basically, one instruction execution happens at a time. Okay, and program counter keeps track of that. Okay, so program counter is increased sequentially until we get control transfer instruction or jump or branch instruction. All right. Is it clear? Any question?
So I had a doubt.
Yeah.
So can you go back to the flowchart picture?
Okay. Which one you are telling, just a minute? This one?
This one? Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
So in this flowchart, sir, there is a data flow from processing unit to control unit.
Processing unit to control unit, yes.
But no data flow from memory unit to control unit.
Yeah.
So the control unit, the only reason that I thought of being a data flow to the control unit was that it needs to read the instructions.
Okay.
Right?
All right. Yes, it can. It can. I mean, there is a possibility that it's going via. Yeah. I mean, just a minute. Okay. All right. We'll note down this. Maybe there's a model that's proposed. We'll see. We'll see whether you mean to say there has to be a line like this, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll see that. And we'll see whether what is the interpretation of that, or whether it's coming through ALU. But you're right. I mean, there is a line. Yeah, because the instruction has to come from here up to here. Okay, so there has to be. Well, I mean, another interpretation could be. Okay, this shows the data path, not really control path. You understand? See, anything that is to do with control or even fetching the instruction is part of the control, right? It's not part of actual, see, it's not part of the data movement. This could be one interpretation in the model. See, data movement is essentially from one register to ALU and ALU to register and from register to memory. Right? I mean, or you get memory to register and then register, execute it, and then finally send it to memory or input output devices. All right. So this is normal data movement happening. And in order to do that data movement, we need control lines. Now, when you treat this instruction also as a data, then if your logic is correct, then we need this line. But at this point in time, let's not get into this level of detail. We just try to understand what these different parts are. But I understand your concern that to me, I think that one human's logic would be that whatever we are doing, whatever we are bringing to control unit is not data really. Is control unit's role is to control the movement of data or execution of instruction, which manipulates the data. That's my understanding. All right. But I understand your concern, and then we'll come back to this. All right. Okay, we have another 10 minutes, so let's now. What do we do when we execute a program? Right, we have certain inputs. Okay, with either come from memory or devices, and then we operate on that, and then we store the value somewhere. The state of the program or state of the machine. Okay, so an instruction execution then can be treated as something that will change the state of automata or FSM or the machine. If instruction execution does not change the state of the machine, then we are not doing anything. Okay, so program execution can be seen as nothing but continuous changing of state of the machine, and the final state will corresponding to the final result. Okay, then now a lot of things are happening in the machine or hardware inside. Something should be visible to programmer outside. What should be visible to programmer? Now this depends on the design, right? So normally something that's visible to programmer is memory. Okay, and memory too, we cannot say the complete memory of system, but memory corresponding to the program. Okay, or part of the address space, we can say. Okay, and then registers, what are the temporary value at given point in time register, because if you want to do debugging, etc., then you need to know. Okay, and of course the program counter, which is the next instruction. So these three things are something that's visible to programmer outside, and all other things that we have discussed, say for example, what is the value of instruction registers and many other elements that we have seen are not visible to programmers. Why that is so? That is so because there's a design that or we have designed system in certain way that Only things that are necessary should be visible to a programmer. All right. Okay. With this understanding, let's go into implementation, or we'll now see how a one human machine works. Okay. Now, one computer that has been designed is called Learning Computer 3, LC3, in the university, some university. Okay, is designed basically to demonstrate how, the one human architecture works. Now, in our course, we will not study LC3 in detail, but it's only for our understanding. So we'll consider LC3 first, and then we'll move on to MIPS and to RISC-4, RISC-5. Okay, here is simplest possible machine with memory address register of 16 bits. It means that it can address 2 raised power 16 locations. Okay, memory data register is 16 bits. It means the word size is 16. Okay, and each location, memory location, will contain 16 bits. And this is word addressable. It means that 16 bits, which is 2 bytes, we will say once we say 0000. Okay, then it will represent first location, and we will say 0001. It will give the address of second word or second location, which is nothing but 2 bytes. 1 byte here, 1 byte here, so on, right? And so on and so forth. This is a word addressable. Input outputs are considered to be keyboard and monitor only. Okay, and there are 2 registers with keyboard data register and keyboard status register. Similarly, monitor has 2 registers, data register and status register. Okay, this is called display data register and display status register. The control unit is FSM, finite state machine. Okay, it directs all activities like a conductor of an orchestra. That's what we have discussed earlier. Processing is carried out step by step and clock cycle by clock cycle. Okay, so it essentially does operation sequentially, one after other. Okay, and note that clock is input to FSM. I mean, we will show that diagram, right? Okay, an input to FSM is through instruction register. What it does is essentially it reads the value, it brings the instruction from memory to instruction register and interprets that instruction and generates a lot of control signals. Okay, and program counter is part of control unit. We have seen that program counter tracks the next instruction to be executed. And output of the finite state machine in control unit is number of control signals, right? That we have shown as by non-filled arrow. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's now see what this machine looks like. Okay. Now look at something that's shown here in pink is control unit. Okay, it has program counter, and then of course there is a multiplexer, there is a finite state machine, there is an instruction register, and input to finite state machine is clock, and also output from instruction register nothing but instruction, which is of 16 bits. So instruction will be read from memory. Okay, from memory instruction will be read. It will come here. Now this instruction is input to FSM, finite state machine. Its input is another clock, and based on that instruction, it will generate various control signals like this control signal or control signal here. But it may not generate all control signal. It will generate control signals corresponding to instruction. Okay, and remember that something that is shown as non-filled arrow is a control signal like this here, or the here, and something that's shown as a filled arrow like here is data movement. Okay, all right. So based on instruction, it will generate control signal. That's what we have discussed, right? So these are the control signals. We already discussed this. Data movement is shown as a filled arrow. Okay, then we have memory is here, which is 16-bit addressable. Addressable, it means that it has 2 bytes per word. Okay, and then we have memory address register, which is again of 16 bits, and which points out to the memory location or memory word. Okay, then we have output of the memory. You know, whatever word you read, which is of 16-bit, goes to memory data register. Okay, and now note that this is a solid arrow. It means that it is a data that flows out, and here there is a gate, and gate gets a control signal from somewhere. Okay, of course it's through FSM. Okay, now let's look at what's next. Then we have 2 registers, KBDR and KBSR, which is keyboard data register and status register, and the monitor data register and status register. Then ALU has 2 inputs. Okay, there are 2 inputs here and 1 output, and each input is of 16 bits, right? The one here and the, okay, and output is of 16 bits. And it has also a control input, which is of 2 bits, okay, which decide what instruction, what is to be done inside, right? Whether it's add or whatever. There are, it means that it has input 2, means that it can do only 4 operations. Okay, we'll see. Okay, all right. And then there are 8 general purpose registers, where basically we can store temporary values. Okay, there is one instruction register we have seen, then program counter, and this is FSM. Okay, and then we have something that we already discussed. To control operation of ALU, we have something called ALU control, and there are some certain number of gates. Okay, all right. So this now role of this FSM is to interpret instruction that has fetched in and generate various control signals, and that control signal will go to various units like register file, ALU, memory, and various gate multiplexers, such that the instruction execution happens. All right, so that's all we have to discuss today. So what we have studied today is as follows, right? We have looked at what is von Neumann model. We know that memory, it has 5 parts: memory, processing unit, input, output, and control unit. Memory unit has 2 registers, which call it memory address register and memory data register. And we have seen the use of these. And then processing unit has ALU and registers. Okay, registers operate at very fast speed. And then control unit generates control signals, like conductor of orchestra generates control signals to execute each instruction. And the whole model is called a stored program concept, because program is stored in memory. All right. So that's all. Any question?